a bunch of people on Facebook Live as well. Let's see here. Okay. I think we are live. All right. So where are you at?
I'm right now I'm in Southern California, like Orange County, South Los Angeles. But I go back and forth between here and actually BC, British Columbia, Canada. So
No way. I was going up to Vancouver quite a bit before the pandemic. We're in BC.
Actually east of Vancouver. So it's Kelowna is like the biggest city nearby.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So kind of east of the mountains then.
Yeah. On the other
Okay.
side. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went through there. Actually, no, just once on the way up. No, we went through there twice. Way up to Banff one time, and we actually stayed there overnight and kind of broke the trip up into 2 days. And then we drove all the way back to Seattle in 1 day, and that was a really, really long drive from Banff to Seattle.
I bet, yeah. Even for me, it's from that area to Seattle 6 hours. So from Banff, I can only imagine.
Yeah. And then the other time we went up there, we went to what's the one north? Is it Jasper?
Yeah. I haven't even been there yet. Yeah.
Oh, that's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous area. We drove the Icefield Parkway and took a bus, one of those buses with the monster truck tires out on the glacier.
Okay.
It was awesome.
Okay, I will put that on my list of things to do then.
So I'm just going to drop the Zoom link here because I see there's people on Facebook Live watching, but we can go ahead and chat. So what are you currently doing, and what are you looking to do? And
yeah, for sure. I don't know what I just saw this. I joined some of those Facebook groups here or there, like wholesale, just real estate pages here or there, kind of seeing what's going on in different areas. So my story in a nutshell is that my husband and I, we fumbled into real estate. So what happened was we always knew it was something that had potential. We wanted to do, own property, something. So over in that area, not far from Kelowna, there was like lots back then for like 90 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, 90 grand's attainable for like our salaries right now. So we bought a lot, but we partnered with someone. So we went 50-50, partnered with someone, got a construction loan, hired a general contractor, flipped it. Our cut was like 30 grand. It was a lot of headache. And we're like, this is a lot of work for not so much money.
Yeah.
But then we tried. Yeah.
30 grand isn't very much for all that risk too.
Yeah. Financial risk, right?
Yeah.
So then we did a few more, had big gains, big losses. Throughout the process, we eventually got our own general contractor's license. So over in British Columbia, we're general contractors. But we've also gained a lot of financial literacy and literacy around real estate. So since Seattle is not far from us, things like that, we were just kind of exploring the area with fix and flips and things like that. It would be cool if we could do something, wherever. And because I'm American, like it's not any trouble for us with legalities. Yeah.
So you're not doing anything in California then, as far as real estate goes?
Not yet. I mean, I'm there was like a potential property, but it's a distressed situation, and there's a lot of partners in that, which is like good. The more distressed, I guess the kind of more leverage on one end, but at the same time, multiple partners want different things. So they have multiple owners.
Talking about partners that actually own the property right now. Oh, okay. Yeah, that can definitely make things a bit more sticky. But at the same time, I found, sometimes negotiating a price reduction when there's multiple people involved is a bit easier because it's a less of a cut to each individual person on that deal, right? So if you needed to get like 50K off, and like it was 5 people that inherited this property, right? And so nobody really wants to deal with this thing. If you need to be 50K lower, that's like 10K out of everybody's pocket. So that's like sometimes easier to get everybody to buy off on than if it was just one person having to take a 50K cut on a deal, right?
Yeah.
So, but then again, you end up in situations too where like the people involved just can't agree with each other on what to do with it, and it ends up going nowhere. So kind of can go either way on that. Okay, Kathy is on Facebook asking for the passcode. What is going on here? This should be free for anybody to hop on without a passcode. Let me see if I can turn this off. Hey Anthony, what you got going on here? How's it going?
Hi, Rob. Yeah, nice to see you here.
Yeah, good to see you
Yeah.
too. What are you up to?
Oh, same with Mandy. I live in Vancouver, BC, and I'm the builder, general contractor.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm new to Seattle because yeah, I just couple friends in Washington.
Uh-huh.
So I just been to Seattle last month.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and nice to connect with you and Chloe.
Oh, Chloe, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So you live in the Vancouver area then?
Yes.
Okay. So you're looking to do deals then in Seattle, or are you looking to kind of expand what you're doing up in BC then?
I'm new to US. That's why I looking for Seattle much close to Vancouver.
Mhm.
But I'm much more study for Washington and Texas.
Oh, Texas. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good cash flow state for sure. So, oh, here, I'm just pasting the passcode in on
Don't worry.
3036 093. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so what are you looking to get into wholesaling at all, or are you looking to stay as a builder, or what are kind of your plans?
Since I'm new to US, right? So probably I'm going to flip first,
Uh-huh.
and then birth or after multi-family for the future, right? So yeah, that will be the strategy for in a 1 year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the I from what my understanding is, you can't wholesale in British Columbia. It's not legal to do there what you do.
Couple, not much, but I know it's much more in crypto market US,
Mhm.
much
Mhm.
easier.
Yeah. So, all right, Catherine, you found your way.
Oh,
Hi, Rob.
welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. How you doing? I see
Good.
Jake connecting now. Let's see, I pasted the Zoom link here in Facebook if anybody else wants to hop on board. So, yeah, why don't we just go ahead and I'll just open it up to questions, or if anybody's got any deals that they're working on that they want to talk about, and kind of take it from there. So, Catherine or Jake or Mandeep or Anthony, got anything?
How long have you been doing this?
What's that?
How long have you been doing this? I see all your deals all the time posted. Like, he's on fire.
Hey, Cecilia. I see Cecilia just joined. So real estate, about 11 years now. I started doing flips. I was buying properties at the foreclosure auction. This was after the market had crashed and was kind of starting to come back. And then I got into wholesaling probably in like 2018. as a way to start finding deals for myself, because I was buying deals off of wholesalers and seeing what they made on those deals. And I was thinking, wow, if I could find those deals at the prices that the wholesalers got them locked up at, that would have been an even sweeter deal to me, because I had bought these deals off of wholesalers and they were still deals to me at whatever price the wholesalers marked it up at. So I started doing like direct mail and a few other things to try to market, and quickly found out that the wholesalers were earning their money that they were making on these deals. It wasn't easy at all. I thought I could just send out some direct mail and get some people to call me and get a deal locked up, but no, you got to talk to a lot of unmotivated sellers before you find somebody that's actually motivated. So it was about 4 years ago that I really started getting into this, and it was about 2 years ago that almost 2 years ago now that I completely have gone, full time and doing mostly wholesaling. I've got some rentals as well. I've got a burg going on, a fourplex in the Atlanta area. And so I'm kind of using wholesaling as a way to acquire properties and build passive cash flow.
So for Washington State, I heard you're not really supposed to market to foreclosure lists.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject. I don't personally do it. Well, actually, I don't do any direct to seller marketing now at this point. I don't run any marketing at all. All my business is based off of referrals and working with agents and other wholesalers and stuff like that. But if I was actively marketing, yeah, you got to be really careful marketing to or talking to pre-foreclosures and wholesaling those properties. So if you happen to pick up a pre-foreclosure lead as through another channel, like if you were marketing to like a tax delinquent list of properties and you happen to get somebody in pre-foreclosure, that's okay. You want to make sure though that they know that they should talk to an attorney, because you don't want them to come back at some point and say, oh, this person took advantage of me, because I was in foreclosure, because then you can end up in hot water for sure. But yeah, specifically marketing to pre-foreclosures, you can get in trouble in Washington for doing that. So I definitely don't recommend directly going after pre-foreclosure leads as like a lead source here in Washington State. In other states, it's okay to do, and you probably want to check with the laws of that particular state if you're looking at doing it elsewhere, just to make sure it's okay. But definitely would avoid doing that here in Washington. Let's see here. Connor made it, I see, from the Astro group. How's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
How's the program going so far, and what are you kind of learning?
Good, man. It's huge. I've been loving it. Just kind of going through the basics, diving into just, I guess, the entire industry. I mean, a little bit new to it, but yeah, man, I've been going through the like elite group member, whatever list, and trying to connect with all of them. So I'm glad you have this so I can connect with you.
Awesome. Cool. And then I see Cecilia's on the call. She's pretty seasoned. She's out there right now looking for multifamily stuff. So what's the latest on what's going on right now?
Well, I wanted to hear how your Atlanta project's going.
So yeah, I just closed on that a week from Friday, this past Friday. So I've had it about a week and a half now. The contractor talked to the property manager and an architect, and they said, hey, let's see if we can actually, there's 2 units on the top floor, 2 units on the bottom floor. They said, hey, we can actually potentially turn this bottom floor into 4 units, 2 bed, 1 bath a piece, and so the whole building would be a 6-unit building rather than a 4-unit building.
Oh, nice.
And see if we could, potentially increase the income a bit that way. So the contractor went to the city hall to talk to them to kind of find out what's possible with that property. And they shot it down. They said, it's zoned for actually a single family house, that lot. But since there's already 4 units there, it's grandfathered in, and they said you could keep it as a 4 unit, but you can't put any more units in there already. So, yeah, the project is, so we're in the process of applying for the permits now, and that's probably going to take a couple weeks to come through. And then before we can start work, and in the meantime, the architect's going to work on a few different floor plans for those bottom units. The top units there's tenants in them already at this point. They're going to need some updates to the electrical system, but they're not going to have to move out while that's going on. And then the bottom units are all going to be completely gutted, and they're in pretty bad shape. So the pretty amazing thing about this deal, and I don't know if I can't remember if I told you or not. So I had a private investor that I had lined up that was going to fund this thing 100%, right? And then they end up saying, I don't feel so comfortable doing something out of state. I'd rather stay in state. And so I was like hustling to try to get another form of financing lined up on this thing, ideally with as little money out of pocket as possible. So somebody sent me a referral to Longhorn Capital out of Texas, and they're a hard money lender. They lend in probably like 6 states, maybe 6 to 8 states. And they ended up coming through big time. They ended up funding the entire thing.
Wow.
Like 100% of purchase plus rehab. Their qualifications for it are it needs to be 70% of ARV if you're flipping it. So they'll fund the entire thing up to 70% of ARV.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you're burring it, they'll do up to 75% of ARV. So I was asking for a loan of 285. And so they had to do an appraisal because with the scope of work, because they want to determine what this thing is going to be worth when all is said and done, right? Because that's what they're going to base their loan amount on. And so it had to come in like around 400-ish, probably a little less. It would have worked as well. And the appraisal came in at 410. So they were good funding the entire thing. The points they wanted paid up front, and then, but everything else they're funding the full amount on. So it isn't cheap. It's 3 points and 11%, but I just had to pay basically the points up front at closing, and then the closing costs on the property, and then everything else was good to go. I tried a little trick, and it didn't work on this deal. So I got it locked up in my wholesaling LLC for 175, right? And I knew I would probably have enough room on this to wholesale it if I wanted to. So what I did was I actually assigned it to my rental LLC at 200K.
Oh.
So they call this a self-assignment, where you basically assign it to yourself, and you're able to unlock equity at closing. So what I was hoping would happen is basically I'd close on this, my rental LLC would pay 200K for this, and then my wholesaling LLC would get a 25K assignment fee on it, right? Because it was assigning it from 175 to 200. Some lenders are okay with this, but this lender wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they looked at it and they said, "Hey, we're already like giving you 0 down. We're not giving you 25K at closing as well on this." So that ended up not going through. I also asked, well, what about if the seller bumps up the purchase price to 200 and gives me a 25K credit, seller or buyer credit at closing? And they said, no, that's basically the same thing. So we're not gonna do that. So, but I had a friend here in Seattle that bought a deal off of me, and they basically did that. So they bumped the purchase price up 40K and then got 40K at closing.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's something to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah.
If you have enough room on the deal, like between what you have it locked up at and what it's actually worth, both the as is value and the after repair value, you can potentially unlock some of that equity up front at closing rather than waiting on the back end till you
Hmm.
a refinance. So unfortunately, in my case, I'm going to have to wait till I do the refi to unlock the equity that I have in the property, or that I will have in the property once it's all fixed up. So so we'll see. So it's interesting, actually, this wholesaler found another deal in the same town that he's marketing right now, and I'm very tempted to take a look at it, but I kind of swore that I wasn't going to take on any more single family house projects, and that's what this particular project is. So I gotta kind of just, I guess, stick to my guns on it and pass. But I was like, oh, the numbers on this deal look really juicy, and I already got, now I'm gonna have 4 units in this town. I could just have the property manager take on this, but the single family house thing is not scalable. So I think I got to just kind of stick to the rules I set for myself and not create more work for myself in the long run. So
Yeah, that's got to be tough when you're seeing so many good deals out there.
yeah. So yeah. So what do you got going on? Do you got anything looking promising? Any good conversations in the last couple weeks?
Not well. I did talk to, so I've been doing like cold calling sellers, and I talked to someone that was interested in selling, but wanted like retail price if this is for a vacant lot in Spokane, that you could build a duplex on. So he gave me the price, and I told him I'd kind of look into it and get back to him, but and he is not very motivated, so I don't know how much room there's going to be there. But
Like,
it was a seller that was
is he-
wanting to sell, just the price was high. So
yeah, is he way off on price from where you need to be on it?
well, I mean, it's retail, so he's asking for 110. I mean, retail for that lot might be like 105 to 115.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I would probably pay like 80 for it. I mean, for it to work for me. So it's, yeah, it's kind of off.
Mm. So he's at 110 and you need to be at 80.
Mhm.
Mm. And have you given him a number yet at all?
Not yet. Yeah, I was just kind of checking, like just confirming what could go there, and doing a little due diligence on my end.
Mhm.
So yeah, I haven't had like a follow-up conversation with him yet.
Mhm. Yeah, so probably how I would approach it is I would see if I can find any like low comps in that area. So if you need to be at 80, like if that's your max, you can't start there, right? Because then you throw 80 out there, he's at 110, like then you have no room to go up if he like counters, right? So you need to like reset his expectations and then see like if he's motivated at all. And what I would do is I would just try to find anything out there that was like super, super low. If you can, I don't know if you have access to PropStream or MLS or anything like that, or even Zillow, actually, for that matter. Although Zillow doesn't, I don't know if it necessarily shows stuff that sold off market as a cash sale or not.
Um, yeah, I'll have to check. I've asked title companies for sold properties to get like off market numbers. So I could check with that. I did look on Redfin a little bit, and there are some lower comps. They're just like kind of in like a further out area. But would you just kind of throw that out there?
Yeah, so like how low are they?
I mean, there's comps as low as like, I don't know, 60 or 65, but like on the other side of town. And then there's a decent comp that I was probably gonna go back and show him that was like 90. It went really fast on the MLS. So I think it was a little bit underpriced, but yeah, that's like a solid comp, I think.
Yeah, so basically the idea is you just want to go and completely like reset his expectations on and anchor him low, right?
Mm.
So even if you're like, if you can find something that was like 40K
Okay.
or even like, so the idea is like you want to put that number out there just in the conversation,
Mm.
right? Not necessarily that that's what your offer is going to be, but the way I would put it in there is like, yeah, so I'm just running my numbers on this, trying to figure out where I need to be. It's definitely going to be like a lower than where you're at. I saw this comp like that sold for 40. I'm not saying that's where I need to be, but I'm just saying like this is what I, saw. So all of a sudden, like if you have to come in like at 65 now, 40, doesn't sound as bad now that you like worked that 40K into the conversation, right? So it will kind of soften that blow a bit. So you're kind of like resetting his expectations on where you need to be now. Like if you end up coming up to 80, that sounds way better than 40.
Mm.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. And then if he comes back and he's like, oh, hell no, F you, like I know what my property's worth. I'm gonna get every cent I deserve, like all that stuff, and I wouldn't waste any more time on him, right? Like you're not
Okay.
you're not gonna talk them down. Like you only want to be talking to people that are like that need to sell their property. And you don't want to be talking to people like, oh, I'm gonna sell it for 110 and I'm willing to wait to get my price. Those people aren't gonna be motivated enough to like come down to where you need to be on this now. But at the same time, just hit them up every month and say, hey, just want to check in, see how it's going. Anything changed with your circumstance, so you definitely want to just, stay in touch with them because you never know, like if something happens and he's like, yeah, I actually just need cash now. Something's come up and let's just get it done at 80. Like if that's what you said you needed to be at, if you can close in 2 weeks or whatever it is, like, let's just get this done. So if he comes across as like not being very, very motivated right now, I wouldn't spend a whole lot more time on him right now, but just ping him like periodically. And then, eventually maybe he changes his mind or maybe ends up listing the property for 110 and, sells it. But yeah, I think, yeah, you only really want to be spending time with those sellers that need to sell their place, right? Because you could be talking to other people that are really motivated, right? Instead of wasting time with somebody who's like, I don't know, maybe I really want my price, blah, 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 blah. And then I don't know if like terms would work for you or not. Like, would this deal make sense at 110 if you could get it on like seller financing?
Yeah, I haven't really looked a whole lot at that yet. Yeah, I was just trying to focus on like getting like buying into the equity, but yeah, I haven't looked at it that way yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it's something that you would be like open to doing, like, let's say, yeah, if you could get it for, some low interest rate for an extended period of time while you get the plans and everything in place, so it cuts down on your holding costs, then maybe the deal makes sense at 10 if he's not getting paid till like you're further along in the process, right? Or even have the place like rented up, like all built and ready to refi. So it's just something to consider as well. Because it's interesting, like some people are like so fixated on their price, they don't like care about the terms. Like I got a 0% 10-year mortgage from somebody that just like had to get this number because in his mind, if he didn't get this number, he was losing money on this property that he bought, right? And so he was willing to give me free money for 10 years just because he wanted to get this price. So it's really interesting to see the different things that motivate people behind what it is that they want, right? So this guy was like, in his mind, he was so worried that if he sold it for the cash price that I was offering, he was losing money, right? And so he was willing to defer his equity that he was getting over this 10-year period and not collect any interest on it. So that's that. I mean, that kind of illustrates, like, you really have to like kind of get into understanding what is motivating them to sell this property and why it is that they're asking for that price, you know. Because if you can kind of drill into that, then maybe you come up with a solution that works for both them and it works for you as well, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, those are great ideas.
So Catherine, what are you up to exactly right now? You still there? No, she's hopped off or not. All right, how about Jake? Everybody's turned their cameras off and they're hiding right now.
Well, I'm not in my office right now.
Oh, you're not at your desk?
No, I'm not at my desk. So, but no, things are going good. I had a deal almost fall apart. It was supposed to close yesterday, and then my buyer backed out last second.
Okay. So what did you
And,
do?
well, so I got this house under contract at 380 in Syracuse, Utah, and had people walk it and had to talk them down to 300. So I talked them down 80K down to 300.
Oh.
Found a buyer at 330. It was going to be great. And then the house was on a well and nobody knew that.
Oh.
And so my buyer didn't want it and he backed out.
How did he get out of the contract?
Well, so I had him put down 5,000 earnest money and I'm actually going to go pick that up today. And so, yeah, the earnest money in my assignment, it's non-refundable as soon as he accepts it. So I picked that up today.
Oh, wow. So this was a big enough deal for him to walk away from 5K?
And it's weird because I had a couple of more buyers walk it and I reassigned it, just pushed back closing 10 days and I reassigned it again. And so I just think the well scared him a little bit, but it just reminded me the importance of earnest money on your assignments too.
Yeah. So we ended up increasing our earnest money amounts we had increased it when the market turned down initially, because we had one buyer that just walked away from 10K and he basically just told me to keep it. Because this is as the market was turning, and he's like, if the market drops another 10%, I'm going to be so underwater on this deal. So I'd rather lose the 10K than, 80K on it. But we're fighting with another buyer right now who couldn't close because his hard money lender wouldn't lend on the deal, and the seller isn't giving an extension on it. And so he doesn't want to here's the thing too. I don't know if it's the same in Utah. Do you have to get all parties to basically sign around to release the earnest money?
No, my assignment, the way it's specifically worded is we do not need permission or consent to release earnest money.
Okay. So the title company. Okay, this is interesting because then whose call is it to release the earnest money to who? Is it your call?
At that point, well, and at least in this one specifically, it was the title company's call.
Okay. Yeah, see, the title company here wouldn't do that. They view that as a liability. So they want all the parties, or at least the end buyer, whoever the end buyer is, and the seller, to both sign off to say who gets the earnest money. So even if the contract clearly states that there's no contingencies, and the only way the buyer gets their earnest money back is if the seller can't deliver clear title, then it seems very clear, right, who gets the earnest money in this case if it's if the buyer can't get the financing. But the title company is saying, we're not getting involved in this. You need an earnest money release form signed by both parties, and then we'll give the earnest money back. So obviously the buyer doesn't want to sign this thing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's turning into a real nightmare
Well,
here.
At that point, I mean, I guess because I've been one, because I haven't had that issue yet where, you know, I've run into that. At that point, do you think a letter from an attorney would be enough to get him to sign that?
Yeah, so I think that's going to be the seller's next move, is to send the, have the seller's attorney send the buyer a nastygram and basically say, you need to sign this to release the earnest money, or else we're going to, pursue you in court. But, how much money is the seller willing to spend? And the other caveat too is, like, while this earnest money thing is still going on, the seller can't sell their property to somebody else until the earnest money is refunded to whoever it's going to go back to. So, so now that I think about it, this was the case in Indiana as well, because this happened to me on a deal I was selling. It was a rental that I was selling to a retail buyer, and that buyer ended up backing out like 2 days before closing. And, I couldn't put the property back on the market until this earnest money thing was resolved. And it was like $2,500, right? Because it was like a, $120,000 property or something like that. And I'm like, well, the contract says I get the earnest money, right? Because they had passed all their contingencies already at that point, but they weren't going to sign the rescission. And I'm like, how much time and money am I going to spend fighting them? And while this is going on, then I'm accumulating days on market. And so I was like, fine, I'll just give the earnest money back to them. So I think in this case, though, the seller I'm working with is not gonna care if he can't sell this thing right away. So yeah, it's
So what do you bump your earnest money at? What did you bump your earnest money at to on your assignments then?
So on deals that are over 500K, we're doing like 15 to 20K now.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this deal was 10K. And then we got another smaller deal that we're only doing 5K on, but it's a $65,000 purchase. So it's hard to justify 15K EMD on a property that's $65,000.
Yeah, it's 30% down payment.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay.
But I'm kind of curious, like in your case, like, so that buyer, did he do any due diligence on that well after he found out about it, or he's just like, whoa, there's a well, I don't want it anymore?
Well, after he found out about it, I got a hold of all of the water well rights. The seller owns the entire well. They're the only one hooked up to it. And I actually got a quote from the city. It's about $1,500 to hook up the house just to city water. And so I laid out those options. I went back, made sure the well was working. All the plumbing was new last year. Like everything was in good working order. And I went back and showed it to him that everything was brand new. And he still didn't want it.
Wow, interesting. So he viewed losing, and what was the purchase price, 300, or that was what it was locked up at?
That's what it was locked up at. I was assigning it at 330.
Okay. Wow. So he viewed that 5K or that well as a big enough risk to just walk away from the 5K then.
Which is weird because ARV on this is 600 plus.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I wonder if there's something else going on there, and like,
yeah, he just didn't want to disclose that.
Yeah, he already had cold feet at that point, and then this well kind of just pushed him over the edge.
Yeah,
on it. So,
but luckily, it didn't turn into a battle. So,
yeah, that's definitely good. On the other deal I had, it didn't turn into a battle. The guy like happily signed the the earnest money release. So Quang is asking on Facebook, if you were the contract to release the earnest money, if it doesn't close by the closing date, what are you having to do to avoid a refund? What are you doing to avoid having to refund the earnest money when the buyer defaults? What happens if the buyer files a less pendants? Yeah, I don't know if this buyer is going to do that or not. Like basically file a thing saying that he has interest in this property, and then it has to go through legal channels to get resolved.
I mean, if he's wanting to back out and not purchase it, why would he file a notice of interest?
I'm wondering too if, it might be title company specific also. Maybe there are title companies here in Washington that would be okay with if it's worded in your assignment and it's very clear what happened in a certain scenario, then you don't need the earnest money release to be signed by everybody. But the title companies I've worked with so far require that. So yeah, I don't know if there's any title companies here in the Seattle area where they'll be okay with just saying, okay, whatever your assignment says, we'll go with that, and risk the liability if we hand that back to the seller. So yeah, so now basically what the buyer is trying to do is negotiate a discount. So first he said he wasn't giving it back at all, and now he's asking for half of it. And so I'm just trying to be, say, hey, like, I understand your frustration here. He tried 2 lenders, and they both came back and didn't agree with the valuation on the deal, based on what work he was planning on doing to it. And they didn't say they wouldn't lend on it, but they were going to require larger down payment, and he either didn't want to do that or he couldn't do that, right? So even though his intent was still to purchase it, it was a little bit out of his control, and that the lenders that he was working with were asking for more capital than he wanted to put into it. So I was like, yeah, I understand, like, this was somewhat out of your control, but still these were the terms that you agreed to when you signed the assignment, right? So, and the seller no way gonna back off on that. So
yeah, and I've learned, I guess it's a delicate balance of keeping good long-term relationships versus getting $5,000 or $10,000 right now.
yeah, exactly. So on the deal that fell through, then you had 5,000 that the end buyer deposited.
Yep.
How much earnest money? Well, you ended up getting another buyer though lined up, right? So you didn't lose the earnest money that you had put up with the seller. But let's say you didn't have another buyer lined up. How much earnest money did you have on the line with that seller locked up on that deal?
Oh, just $100.
Oh, okay. So you would have pocketed 4,900 then. Yeah. Okay.
It at least would have covered my time working on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's a mistake that we made on this deal, is we didn't create a spread between the earnest money that we put up with the seller and the earnest money that we asked from the buyer, right? So the seller that we're working with is actually a pretty savvy investor, and so he wanted a pretty hefty EMD on this, and he knew we were wholesaling it, and that we work, with a lot of buyers, so he didn't initially want to spend the time to try to sell this thing himself. But now that the buyer fell through, and we don't have anybody else lined up at the price that he's wanting to get for it, so we're gonna just have to cancel the contract at this point. So we did all this work and we're not getting paid anything on this.
At the same time, if your buyer that backed out, if you can't get his earnest money, then you're not only not making anything, you're in the hole.
Well, so the way our assignment is, though, as soon as the buyer puts their earnest money in, ours gets refunded back to us.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So none of our capital's in the deal at this point, right? But if we had put, say 5,000 earnest money in on the contract with the seller, and then we asked the buyer for 10K, we would have got our 5K back. And then in this scenario, the earnest money rescission would have said, seller gets 5K, we get 5, and then we get 5K on it, from that 10K that the buyer had put up. But
Right.
yeah, unfortunately, we didn't do that because we're like, oh, this buyer's super solid, like they're ready to go. They have their earnest money in right away. Like we're closing on this thing no matter what. Like, and then we didn't anticipate the lenders being like super cautious with, what they were doing as far as their valuations on it. So
Well, it's hard when you have like such a serious, solid buyer, and you're like, oh no, I'm not worried about earnest money.
right, yeah, exactly.
It's hard to get away from that thought process. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely lesson learned that future deals where the seller is asking is a bit more savvy and is asking for a higher earnest money amount, that we create a spread there for ourselves in case that doesn't actually materialize. So
Yeah, that's good.
so Quang's asking, what if you have the buyer release the money to you? Yeah, he's not going to do that. Well, basically the issue is that, so we had the property under contract with the seller, and then we had an assignment which basically assigns our rights in that contract to the end buyer. So in theory, we're kind of out of the picture now at this point. It's the seller and the buyer that need to work this out at this point, because those are the two parties on this transaction now. So the seller and the buyer have to be the ones to sign off on it according to the title company, and we're kind of just out of the picture. So we're communicating with both the buyer and the seller, trying to facilitate this, but legally we can't really do anything as far as who's going to get the earnest money back. So, but I think the buyer's just going to have to kind of bite the bullets and do it. They might be able to delay it a bit, but they're not going to win. They're not going to end up winning on this. So anyway, so that was fun last Friday. That deal was supposed to close on last Friday, and got a message from the lender, day of closing, it's not going to happen. So
No, that's frustrating.
yeah, but I mean, also it was a really skinny assignment fee. It was a $5,000 fee, so it wasn't like
Okay.
yeah, it was disappointing for sure, but it wasn't like we were lost a $50,000 deal or something like that. So anybody else want to jump in with some questions? Connor, I'm kind of wondering what you're up to so far, since you're pretty new in Jamil's program. I'm kind of curious what your strategy has been and what you're seeing so far.
Yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to hop on this call. I saw a video that you posted of some Facebook Live you did a little bit ago, just focusing on agent outreach.
Mhm.
And then I watched another live with Tyler, whatever his last name is, doing agent outreach as well. He's in California, I believe. But so I've been focusing or trying to focus on agent outreach, but I wanted to ask you for some advice on where to start. I'm in the Austin market. Obviously, there's thousands of agents.
Mhm.
I'm not, I looked up just kind of a list of agents and was kind of looking through that. And I was like, I'm completely wasting my time if I'm just calling every single agent here, a lot of which are working for the same brokerage company or the same, place. So I just wanted to ask where to start with that. Is there like a certain, search that you're running or filter that you're looking for when you're deciding what agents to call?
Mhm.
That's kind of question number one. And then, yeah, we can go from there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't think you're necessarily wasting your time by like calling every agent that you can find, right? Because even the ones that are working in the same office, they don't always share deals with each other. So if somebody gets a referral, an agent gets a referral for a deal that they don't want to list, they're not necessarily going to tell everybody in the office about it. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But the idea is you want to establish as many connections as you possibly can, because the more agents you're talking to, the more people you have looking for deals for you.
Yeah.
If you want to focus like on lower hanging fruit, what I typically do is like I'll go to realtor.com and I will take an area or a county, type that in, because there's a little link on realtor.com to search for agents.
Okay.
And then you can then you can sort the agents by most deals sold or most deals active right now or highest rating or whatever. And then kind of work your way down the list that way. And so typically what I'll do is I'll sort by most sold deals or something like that. It's either most sold deals or most active deals, because at least those are the people that are doing something right now, right? So if they got a lot of listings for sale, they're probably getting a lot of referrals. Like they got a really good network.
Okay.
And so they're probably more likely to get something off market than somebody that's not really doing a whole lot. So I think if especially if you have limited time, I would start there and work your way down the list that way. And then it always kind of strokes their ego a little bit, I find, when they say, well, how'd you find me? And I say, oh, I was looking up agents in Pierce County and I sorted it by, most sold listings, and your name was really close to the top of the list. And oh, wow, that's awesome.
Genius.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then I don't know if you're using Podio or whatever, or spreadsheet, it doesn't matter, but I just keep track then of who I called, kind of how receptive they were to, sending me stuff, and then just the date I talked to them. And that way, then I can go back and then sort that list to say, oh, who haven't I talked to in a month? And then just follow up with those people again.
So, yeah, I mean, kind of moving off of that, I'm sure there's not a set number, but there's got to be some sort of limit of the amount of agents I have, going through a little cycle there. If I'm, attempting to continually reach out with the same agents so that they recognize, oh, Connor's reached out to me 3 times in the past 4 months.
Mhm.
Here's a deal that he might send it to him, right? So you want to be consistently reaching out so that, you don't just call once and then ghost them forever.
Yeah.
So do you have maybe not a number, but just some sort of idea of what's kind of a limit of agents that I could handle consistently reaching out to?
So it all comes down to how much time do you have, to do calling and prospecting. So ideally, kind of once you got a pretty good database, you'd want to split your time between following up with agents you've already established a connection with, and then calling new agents, right?
Yep.
And so for one person, from what I've heard, Jamil and then Ryan Zolan talk about is if you could get 200 or 300 agents kind of in your database, you can get a pretty good amount of deals coming your way, because typically an agent might come across 1 deal a year or 2 deals a year that they don't want to list, right? And so if you can get enough of those but maybe those are deals and maybe they aren't, right? Just because they have something off market doesn't mean it's a deal.
Yep, gotcha.
Right? Because sellers are just unrealistic right now about what they can do as far as price goes. And so I have agents send me deals and I was like, nah, this doesn't work. This is they basically want a price on market, but they want to sell it cash. So
Yeah.
So out of those agents that are sending you deals, the amount of deals that you get that might actually work is going to be a subset of those. But yeah, I mean, if you can get a couple hundred in your lists that you're hitting up regularly, like every month or so, that would be a good amount of agents to be going through on your own.
Awesome. And then
Yeah.
do you tend to follow up every month? Is that kind of like a number for you?
Yeah, every few weeks to a month. Now it also depends on like how receptive the agent was.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Although I have to say, like I've done like 110,000 in assignment fees with this one agent, and she was initially really cold when I talked to her.
Uh-huh.
She was like, "Oh, I only do luxury listings. I don't do investment properties. I don't come across like hoarder houses, all that stuff." And then she ended up sending me 2 deals, and so you never know. Like you can talk to somebody that can be very standoffish and then they get something, right? And
Right. Yeah.
send it your way. So but the people that are especially receptive to you, those people, you definitely want to make sure you're like
Right.
if you're like running short on time or whatever, be hitting up the people that are like, oh yeah, I've got something coming up, or they've sent you stuff in the past. Those are like your VIP agents that you want to be focusing your time on.
Okay. Cool. And I saw there was not one other, but a different strategy of agent outreach was I actually am subscribing to Privy, so I can see like kind of the on market deals, and then looking through them. If you see a distressed property, just immediately calling that agent, and before wasting any time on comping or figuring out if it could even possibly be a deal, just calling them. Do you think that's another good way to go about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like what I'm seeing right now, because before the pandemic, we were doing a lot of locking up a lot of MLS deals to wholesale, right?
Yeah.
And the problem now is like the prices have come down, and the discount that investors want off of those prices has gotten bigger. So you need to lock up those properties at like a much bigger discount to the list price than you had to previously. So a lot of these listing agents that you call on these on-market distressed deals, there's probably not a deal there, but that agent could have other deals, right? So I still like calling the distressed listings, because even if that seller is being unrealistic about what they can get for their property, maybe that agent's got something else. So the call with the agent, I'll be like, hey, like, what's this? I always ask, what's the story with this? What's the seller wanting? Like, what's going on with this property? Like, and build some rapport with the listing agent that way. And then you, like, while you're on the phone with them, you can kind of be looking through and seeing if there's any comps there, and kind of figuring out where you might need to be at on price. And maybe it's like 100K, and you could be like, yeah, this, I'm going to need to be way lower on this. And I don't know if you talk to other buyers and if got other offers in, but yeah, we need to be much lower than where it's listed at. How motivated is the seller on this? And keep the conversation going that way. If they're like, no, they're really firm, on their price, and they're just gonna let this sit there, don't spend any more time on that deal. But then I say, hey, I'm looking for something like this. Do you have anything else available or coming up that I could take a look at? And then add that agent to then your list of agents then that you're following up with, right? Because maybe they have something right now, or maybe they don't. Like a lot of times they say, oh yeah, I've got, something I'm working on that, they think they'll probably be ready to go in like 2 or 3 weeks. I can send it over to you to take a look at, sort of thing.
Sweet.
So,
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. I guess that's kind of the questions that I had for you today.
all right, cool.
Yeah, thank you.
So it is noon, but Quang has one more question. Eric, I see you're on Facebook Live. We're just about to get off the call here, though, so I'm going to answer this last question. So how do you sell to the seller? Let me sell your house. I have a list of buyers. I should be able to sell your house within 30 days, or give me 30 days. So what I say is, I work with I represent a lot of investors. We buy houses for cash. you have to figure out really what their motivation is. So I try to get out of the objection first. Like, why don't I always just ask them, why aren't you listing this? You're going to get a higher price for listing the property instead of selling it to an investor. And I just want to figure out like why would they be talking to me rather than listing it? And like usually it's like, oh, I hate agents, or I don't have the time to do this. It's going to take 30 days just to get it on the market and having people going through it. So you got to figure out first, are they more motivated by time and convenience to get their property sold, or are they more motivated by money? Because if they're more motivated by money, then it might not make sense to spend time dealing with that seller. If you're licensed, you could offer to list it for them, or you could refer it to an agent and maybe get a referral fee. But if they say, I need this thing gone, and then I say, okay, well, we could do that. Like I represent investors, we buy, houses to flip and to turn into rentals and that sort of thing. So here's where we would need to be on price. I'm going to have my investors and my contractors walk through here, and we're going to just assess the condition, put some rehab budgets together, and just make sure we'd be able to do it at, but here's where we would need to be. And then kind of go from there and seeing what they're open to. I know some wholesalers come in and say, oh, I'm the one that's buying your house, right? And then they got to lie to the seller to get people to go through there and take a look at it and stuff like that. But I'd rather be just upfront and say, I work with other investors and represent them, and so we'll have to have them come through and bring their contractors and stuff like that to get a rehab budget put together. So and then I usually put an inspection period on there too. Like if it's an off-market deal, maybe 2 weeks, because at the 2 week mark, you should know at the 1 week mark, you should know if you're going to be able to sell that property for whatever price you have it locked up at, based on the feedback coming from the buyers, and then you can either try to negotiate a price discount and say, hey, like the rehab numbers are coming in way higher than I initially anticipated. Here's where we'd have to be, or, you could just let the property go at that point if it's not going to work for the seller, and then steer them in another route. So, oh, Mandeep's hopping off. Thanks, Mandeep. Okay, so it's noon here. So, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to DM me on Facebook. Eric, I'm sorry you just joined at the very last minute. I'll be back here at 11 again next week. So if you want to hop on, it's going to be the same link, same Zoom link. So, which it looks like you didn't get if you were asking actually for it on Facebook Live. So, but I'll make sure I post it onto my Facebook page, so it's back out there again, so you can hop on next time. So cool. All right, thanks, Cecilia. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next week.